In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the ScaleTrains HL Scout Rivet Counter EMD SD38-2 locomotive. All four locomotive examples we will be looking at in this video are equipped with ESU-Lok Sound, DCC, and sound. We have three GATX X Reserve Mining versions and one Burlington Northern Whiteface late 80s, early 90s version. With the box opened up, you can see you got your product manual with all your prototype history, information, operating on DCC and whatnot. You have your typical foam covering and your model in the package. It also has foam in there to protect the handrails. We'll take this out and get a closer look at it. Here are the four SD38-2 locomotives out of the box. We have the one Burlington Northern version, and not one, not two, but three GATX X Reserve Mining locomotives. You can already from the start see some variants with some paint details. We have the white patch out here, and the other ones are brown, so that's kind of unique. And I know some of you are probably thinking, well, this is Burlington Northern modeler. Why does he have three of those and only one Burlington Northern model? Well, interestingly enough, Burlington Northern acquired these from the Frisco Railroad when they acquired Frisco. So these were actually kept captive in Oklahoma and Memphis. They really didn't venture outside of those yards. They worked the humps there. Oddly enough, when Reserve Mining got rid of these and GATX acquired them, these were used on Burlington Northern, mainly in North Dakota, Wisconsin, Minnesota area, but they also found their way quite regularly on the BN racetrack. And I ordered these road numbers specifically due to photographic proof of these ones being on the racetrack from the 80s to the 90s. So that's pretty unique. I'll actually show some slides here I had purchased off eBay. Credit to the original photographer on these. I have not digitized them yet, but I will show the slides on my slide viewer, specifically of the 1237. I actually have a photo of this one, two photos that came in a set of this leading a train long hood forward with the gyrolite on the rear end of the long hood operating as well. So it's a pretty unique slide. And that was on the racetrack. So there's a reason I have three of these. I actually have a fourth one in the mail. I'm so impressed with them. So it's gonna be 1244. Not gonna be here in time for this video. I wanted to get this video up before these sell out so people can see this video and hopefully head over to ScaleTrains' website and purchase some or go to their favorite dealers. We're gonna get these on the layout and go over some more details. Before we do, we're gonna do a little bit more comparisons. You see some of them have the crosswalks, some of them do not. The crosswalk detail is also on this one on the 1237 on both ends. However, they're not on the this one at all on either end, but they are on the 1245 at the rear end only. ScaleTrains really did their homework on these. There's other specific details I will compare on these locomotives when we get on the layout so we can showcase it a little bit better. One thing I love about this Burlington Northern one is it is the white face version and it has a beacon. I prefer the stripes, but it's nice to have variants on my layout. So having a beacon with the white face isn't as common as these were starting to get phased out around the time white face was coming around, but the beacons were still being used to some extent. So a brief history of the EMD SD38-2. These locomotive productions started in 1972 and ended in 1979. These were non-turbocharged EMD 645 prime movers in them, so they sound distinctly different than the SD40-2 as you don't have that turbocharger. These produced about 2,000 horsepower. So here are some of the differences we talked about earlier. We have different color patch outs, the white, the brown. You actually have lettering on the brake cylinders on this truck, which is not present on the other ones. You got a Tools logo. We'll zoom in and show all that. You also have black paint up here, which is not present on the other ones. In the background, the 1237 also features mismatched color door handles, which is unique as well. So ScaleTrains did their homework on these. Each unit they tailored the specific prototype details to, and it really sets companies like ScaleTrains apart when they actually take it on a locomotive by locomotive basis instead of just putting just generic details for what the prototype would have had. They are looking at photos. They're getting your paint differences, your stencil differences. It's the little stuff like that that really sets the bar for the Rivet counter lineup. With a closer look of the brake cylinders, you can see the stenciling on them, as well as the tool stenciling I talked about up here. And you get a good look at the brown patch out where the Reserve Mining logo used to be. Here is what I was talking about, the 1237. The door handle on the front door and rear door is a mismatched cream color, so that's also unique. We get a good chance to also look at some specific details of these Reserve Mining, these ex-Reserve Mining models, I should say. They had the gyro light on the nose, which is really great. That is also on the rear of the units as well. So that was kind of a unique aspect to see those, especially on the rear. It really was a nice attention-getting lighting function. And they do operate on these ScaleTrains models. We'll go over the lighting function here soon enough. Burlington Northern only rostered 4 of these SD38-2 locomotives. All 4 were former Frisco locomotives. 2 of them had dynamic brakes. 2 of them did not have dynamic brakes. It depended on which hump yard they operated. The hump yard in Memphis, Tennessee, or the hump yard in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It depended if it was an uphill or a downhill hump. So very interesting. This version I have is the dynamic brake equipped version. I did not get any other versions. Like I said, these were pretty captive units at those 2 yards mainly. So these wouldn't really be running over the system too much. I will use this on my layout to switch the yard out and such. But I thought only having one of these was probably a little more appropriate for what my needs are to try to greater reflect modeling the Burlington Northern around the Chicago area. We're taking some modeler's license with this unit. Right from the start, we noticed this really neat 3-pane weather window. When in comparison, these, these GATX ones only have the regular 2-pane one. You got your beacon I talked about earlier, Leslie RS3K horn, and you got the Y-Phase scheme on this one. Here's a close-up of the dynamic brake section. You can see this has regular exhaust, while the GATX versions have spark arresters on theirs, which is kind of unique. We get a good look at the front of the locomotive. All your details are really great on this. If your grab irons, you've got your MU hoses down here. This one does not have the MU cables like the GATX units have. Handrails are in good shape. This run, I did notice some of them were out of their pegs. I've had like 2 units on this run where I got them out of the box and they were out, but they just simply popped in, and I have no issue once I got them popped in. But otherwise, they're very sturdy and I have no issues with the handrails. No details on any of these units are broken, which is great. You can also see on this Burlington Northern version, the classification lights have been blinked out as they were removed. Here's a good look at the rear of the unit. Love all these grab irons. They're all nicely applied, even look great. The coupler on these is kind of a brownish gray, and it's on all of these ones in this run. They were more of a reddish brown color, and now they're a little more toned down. The wheel sets, the wheel faces, I should say, are also the same. They were more reddish, now they're more toned down brownish gray, and I will show that off here. Here's a closer look as to what I was referring to with the painted wheel faces and molded couplers. We've got the SD38-2, which has the brownish gray wheel sets and coupler, compared to a SD40-2 from their last run, which has the reddish brown coupler and wheel set faces. I personally prefer the look of the grayish brown, which is a little more toned down than your brownish red, which is a little too reddish. I know it was kind of a complaint with a few people for the last few runs. I still think it looks great. They both look great. A lot of manufacturers just do chemically blackened. Personally, I think that painting them or molding them as in the couplers, it's really the way to go. And it's one of the things I love about this Rivet counter line that ScaleTrains has started doing recently. I know the topic of the ScaleTrains couplers comes up every now and then. They are slightly oversized. They don't bother me and they operate reliably. That's, that stuff can all be changed if you're someone who really likes those scale size couplers. Plenty of manufacturers make more to scale ones. These really don't look that noticeable to me, but it's been a complaint from some people in the hobby. But luckily, that's an easy change if you wish to do so. Upon further filming this video, I did notice this locomotive does have some damage. This Burlington Northern version, you can see the end of the steps is kind of cracked off and pushed down. I can flip it back up and I will put glue on to fix it. A little unfortunate to have this out of the factory, but it's a pretty simple fix. Taking a look at some of the lighting functions on this Burlington Northern SD38-2, headlight is a nice yellow glow. It's not too yellow, it's not too blue, it's a perfect hue. The prime manufacturing Strata-Light beacon looks great. I did change the CVs to make it flash a little faster. Out of the box from the factory, it flashes too slow. I believe it was CV112. Don't quote me on that. Definitely consult the ESU-Lok Sound manuals. But I did adjust that to be a more prototypical flash rate. These are mistakenly called rotary beacons. This is not a rotary beacon. It is meant to mimic a rotary beacon. Inside this, there would be 4 bulbs on the prototype that would flash to mimic that. I actually have some models of these I'll show right here. Here is an actual prime manufacturing Strata-Light beacon. As you can see in the interior, you have 4 bulbs which would just flash to mimic a rotary beacon. These were very commonly used on Burlington Northern. The older beacons did in fact actually rotate, but the prime manufacturing versions just simulated one, which is right here on the model. Just kind of need to have the actual thing to kind of compare it to. And that one is what would have been on a locomotive that's actually was never mounted. That is a new one I bought years ago on eBay. It was mistakenly bought for a guy who owned a snowplow truck, thinking it was for a vehicle, and then he saw it was 74 volts, which is locomotive voltage. So it was sat in an attic, and I bought it on eBay many years ago. It does work, you know, I just don't have it hooked up for the video. So just wanted to show off what the prototype looks like inside. So that's kind of neat. The only way to activate the number board lights, the walkway lights, and the ground lights is by turning the locomotive on, which we will do. Here's the lighting on the rear. You can see you've got the walkway lighting down here and on the ends right there. Number boards look great as well. The GATX X Reserve mining locomotives do feature more lighting functions than the Burlington Northern model has per prototype. This one still has the classification lights. You got your extra, second section of an extra, and your end of train markers. This locomotive also features a gyro light on both, not only the front, but the rear of the locomotive, which is a unique addition. And to add to these, some of these GATX units also did receive prime beacons on the roof too. So depending on the unit number, some of them had them. So that's something I do plan to add depending on which unit number I have. I know the 1237 did in fact have one. You can see in some of the slides, if you go back in the video, you can see there is one on the roof. And here is the rear with all the functions. And to once again activate your number boards, walkway lights, and ground lights, you have to start the locomotive up. With the layout in night mode, you can get a good look at the ground lighting and some of the walkway lighting as well as the number boards. Unfortunately, the walkway lighting, there's some bleed through on the plastic, so I'll have to get in there and mask that off with some black paint. And then we'll come to the front. I want to show this with the classification lights turned on. You see the handbrake section on the nose is unfortunately very noticeable, the bleed through. So that's a little unfortunate that that bleeds through like that. So I'll have to be adding black paint on that. All of these Rivet counter ones with sound and DCC do feature a current keeper, keep alive circuit, which are supercapacitors, which will keep these locomotives moving with sound running over slight dead spots in track, which is fantastic. It's a nice feature to have on these. We'll go through a startup sequence on this locomotive, throttle her up a little bit, and then without further ado, we'll do some run-bys with this one on my layout, and then we'll do some ones with the GATX X Reserve mining ones on my friend Brian's beautiful layout, where we'll demonstrate their pulling ability as well as sound such as dynamic brakes. So stay tuned for that. We're going to fire this one up right now. I absolutely love that brake squeal sound when it comes to a stop. So notice this light is pulsating. It is not actually pulsating on the model. This is for some reason my camera does not want to pick the LED up correctly, so I don't know why it does that. Something to do with the LEDs, but the model does not pulsate. It's steady on like it should be. So don't be fooled by my video thinking that it's flashing. It's not. The slow speed performance is also very good on these models. Well, without further ado, let's run the GATX X Reserve mining ones on my friend Brian's beautiful HO scale layout. I'll also include a link in the description to his YouTube channel where he films videos of his layout. You can also see in the video that the beacon appears to be flashing weird at times. Like I said, this is just purely my camera on my phone for some reason having an issue picking up certain LEDs. I have no idea why, but I assure you everything is flashing or operating on steady as it's supposed to on the model.